Welcome back to the V.O.C. Live. We are here yet again another week. We are alive. We've made it back to another Sunday. Some would probably say, how did we do it? But we did it. It's just what we do around here. We have me, Trevor, Jerry. We're all back here. No Jonathan. We got rid of him. He's on a ban for a month. Um, put him in timeout. Put him in the penalty box, whatever you want to call it. He will not be back for a while. He's just trying to be at a kid show, and it's tough to have him as a kid show. I love that he served our country, and I'm all for that. But sometimes those guys, they have some issues when they come back. So,
On Memorial Day too.
yep,
Wow.
on Memorial Day. It's not. It's just that's what happens. I mean, I feel bad for them, but as a friend, I try and help him let out some of his stuff. And sometimes I'm trying to be PG-13, and it goes a little rated R. Um, he's our rated R superstar around here, and I can't have that all the time. Okay.
Perfect for the draft special.
It's just, I mean, WWE had that, and then they had people having sex in the middle of the ring in arenas, and I don't want it to go that far.
Man has morals.
I'm in the PG era now. Like, this is where I'm at in my life. Some would, if you know me, you would think no way in hell, but that's just where we're at right now. But we will jump into sports here. NHL Playoffs, Stanley Cup Playoffs. Always interesting. I said playoff hockey is playoff hockey. Oilers and Stars played today. Oilers are now up 2-1 after winning 6-1 today. Some of these scores have been, especially for the conference finals, have been crazy. Like Florida's scores. They've blown out Carolina their two games. The Oilers were up like 3-0 on the Stars. I want to say game one, Stars come all the way back to win it. But now the Oilers take a lead at 2-1. Panthers are looking for the sweep over the Hurricanes. They're up 3-0. They play tomorrow night. Oilers and Stars game 4 is Tuesday. It is very much looking like a Stanley Cup final rematch of last year. Florida being the defending champs versus the Oilers. Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, two of the top three players in the game on the same team, up against a Florida team that's stacked that went out and got. Basically, they were already a good team. This is like the Warriors going out and getting Kevin Durant when they got Brad Marchand from an division rival in the Boston Bruins, and then getting Seth Jones from the Chicago Blackhawks. So they've like added on to this dream team that they already had. So that's been very interesting to watch. Also, another crazy stat: Carolina, since they won the Cup, I think in 06, they are now 0-13 in their last 4 or 5 Eastern Conference Finals games, which is crazy to think how they've gone that long without even winning a game, not just series, but a game. It's pretty crazy, but it has been entertaining to watch. High scoring games for it being the conference finals. Trevor's like on the move now all of a sudden.
I'm sorry, dude. My internet is not working in my usual place, so I got to go closer to the router.
Now we're on a house tour. Didn't know we were that part of live shows.
Please do not dox them.
I mean, now look at this guy. He's just showing us a tour of his house.
Oh,
what's kicking on? Nice Memorial Day weekend. Who would have thought? But no, been very entertaining Stanley Cup playoffs. Like I said, most likely heading to a rematch. Going to games that have been very entertaining, I would say as well. NBA playoffs. Back and forth games, choke signs going at each other. This stuff's getting pretty wicked. Pacers are up 2-0 over the Knicks. They play game 3 tonight. We talked last week. We all thought the Knicks would make the finals. And here they are with this. Yeah, didn't you? No, you said Pacers, didn't you?
I was on the Pacers train.
Okay, you were. Okay.
This might bite me in the butt still. This series still has a lot of life in it. But
it does, but it has been very, very interesting. It's kind of Cinderella story, Indiana Pacers.
It's weird to call them a Cinderella story for the team that knocked out the number 1 seed in the East, right? And also knocked out the number 5 seed in the Bucks. But like both these series, I know we'll talk a little bit about obviously Minnesota, OKC in a second, have been wildly even in just such different ways. Right. Last night, Oklahoma City and the Timberwolves, not a close game. Minnesota absolutely whomped them. But the first 2 games in OKC, the Thunder whomped them. So in a weird way, you're kind of getting back to even. It's just a blowout wherever we go. You go to the other side of the bracket, every game's close. Right. Game 1, that's going to be a game people remember. for decades. I say that not to even be like hyperbolic or anything like that. You don't get games like that often in any sport. To have Neesmith just show up, drop 5 threes out of nowhere, to have Tyrese Halliburton try to recreate the iconic celebration in the same spot of Reggie Miller in a similar playoff series, right? Only for the shot to be the one that sends them to overtime, not to win the game, right? So they go to an overtime to start this series and they end up winning there. That's a game none of us are going to forget anytime soon. That shot, the Neesmith run, but also the Knicks not even imploding necessarily, but the Pacers just getting extremely hot because in the middle of that run, they're still scoring twos, but I'm terrible at math. I know 3 is more than 2.
Yeah,
And
I would say so.
And they really just did that type of math and dwindled it down. The OG Anunoby, Siakam, weird, like lob catch, non-foul in that moment. Great time to have a review. I rarely ever say that. But like you got this moment. There were so many great moments in that first game. The second game, the Pacers just eke away. Now they are playing in Indy. And all these games, no matter what, have been super close. So it's been a lot of fun. I really am excited for this game 3, though, to see what New York does in Indianapolis after their backs are against the wall. This is a team that's been very good in those situations, but the team that's been a little bit better in that, Indiana. So I don't know if it's like it can be Cinderella by seeding, but this has shown at every moment and every series that they're real. And this is a moment, if you go up 3-0, now you're walking in. And you're walking in against any team on that other side of the bracket that also has a really, really good chance. Both teams have shown that they can win the finals, both Oklahoma City and Minnesota. Minnesota's a tough defensive team. Yes, everyone's at top by Anthony Edwards, but as Anthony Edwards once told us, they've got Jaden McDaniels. You want to talk about a fun defender? That's great. Rudy Gobert, he might give you COVID. He'll also swat your you know what. Like Julius Randle, weirdly tough player. Doesn't look like it, but he is tough. A lot of fun in these playoffs to end this year. And you're talking about the NHL where we might get a repeat. You have 2 teams that are really stacked, especially Florida. You can look at right now this bracket, and even in these situations, I can make the case for any team here still to win the finals. That includes the Knicks down 2-0. I don't know you could say the same thing right now about the NHL playoffs. Maybe the 2 teams left that we think are going to repeat. Sure, it's hard for me to make a case for the Dallas Stars. It is really hard for me to make a case for Carolina. I do not have that problem right now in the NBA playoffs. It has been a fantastic overall playoffs, and I think we're getting a really, really fun, getting closer to a fun conclusion because any finals matchup we get, there's a lot of different storylines. It will be a lot of fun, and there are 4 teams that feel rarely even matched. No one's going to be like, oh, man, this is a sweep series, no matter which one you pick.
Yeah, I think too. I'm not just saying this because I picked the Knicks last week to make it to the finals, but I think if any of these teams could overcome like a 2-0 deficit, it could be the Knicks. We've seen that they've had some pretty hard fought series so far just in this playoffs, and maybe that's taking a toll on them. But I think if any team could take the tough road and come out on top, it could be the Knicks.
Yeah, I mean the Knicks. I mean that the stat from Game 1 where it was like teams that were up like so many points with so many minutes left, 14 with like 2 minutes left, were like 950-0, and then they end up losing and collapsing. Which is kind of funny because that's what the Knicks were doing like to the Pistons and the Celtics is like they would like get down and then go on these historic type runs back, and now the Pacers have done it to them. Tyrese Halliburton was like voted like the most overrated player in the NBA in last year's offseason. He's just come out. He's proven that. I think the other big thing too is with the Pacers is no one's really talking about is like Rick Carlisle's their coach. A guy who's won a title. He's experienced. He understands the game of basketball, the way they have their offense and just everything about it. It's homegrown. It's different. It's good. They play hard. The Knicks could definitely come back. They have the star power, but it is crazy how the switch kind of flipped on them. With the Thunder and the T-Wolves, it's like one of those things where the Timberwolves are really only going to go as far as Anthony Edwards kind of goes. I mean, he shot bad the first 2 games and picked it up in Game 3. So, I mean, they've kind of figured it out. But, yeah, I mean, it's been very entertaining. It's been very good. Let's read some comments here from Nolan. Creepy photo, Nolan Mark. Jim Irsay is smiling down on the Pacers. Of course he is. Jim Irsay, the Colts owner, passed away this last week. A guy that liked to have a lot of fun, some would say. Lived his best life, had his great times, great moments. His last tweet was about the Pacers rooting them on for the Eastern Conference Finals. So maybe Jim Irsay is going to lead this team to the championship. Who knows? It kind of feels like it's the way they're doing. Riley Mark here. I don't know what that is, nor do I know what your photo is. The Mark brother. I'm just going to leave that photo. Jerry, I know it covers you, but that just.
I mean, how can you not respect an image like this? I'm fine. I'm just wearing a hat. Like you can keep that there for as long as you want.
I love how the Mark brothers are getting in on this. Two tightly knit brothers. Some would say they're twins almost. How tightly knit that they are, but both have disturbing photos, to say the least. I'm just gonna leave it here. This creepy photo, and we have that photo.
The V.O.C. where we'll talk about something.
Yeah, I mean, this is entertaining. This is the type of stuff that distracts me. Maybe is this so? This is Nolan as he's trying to get somebody into creepiness, and this is him after he has succeeded. I think that's what this is.
Oh my Lord.
I think that's what this is. We have to keep it entertaining. But no, back to the playoffs, NBA playoffs. It's been very good. Like I said, Game 3 tonight for Knicks Pacers after us here at 8 o'clock. I think the Thunder, Game 4 for Thunder T-Wolves is tomorrow. So, yeah, I mean, momentum can switch so fast. I think in basketball, we talk about all the time, with the lead changes and how leads are not safe when it comes to 20-point leads in games. 2-0 for the Knicks could easily come back, and, who knows? Now they go in to Indiana with some momentum. They're feeling good. And, they're starting to feel themselves. So who knows? They have the talent, most definitely, but the Pacers are playing hot. They're playing really good. And everything about it's been good so far. It's been very entertaining. I would say big year, big playoffs so far for the NBA, helping them get viewership back, I would say.
Well, this is the beauty of having just a lot of parity within your playoffs. Like, yeah, you don't have all the biggest markets. Yes, you have one big one in there, right, with New York, but it's like Indiana's a basketball city, right? Oklahoma City has wildly embraced the Thunder. Like every time you want to talk about home court advantage, you don't hear it as much. It feels like in these NBA games. Like I look at those OKC, like I see that stadium. I think of like the Warriors runs. Everyone's wearing the yellow shirts, and it's packed in Oracle, right? Like Oklahoma City gives me that same energy. Minnesota is fun. And if we would have talked yesterday before Game 3, you're going to tell me Oklahoma City's running away with this. They're tail whipping Minnesota at home, and then they just lose by 40, right? And that's what makes this Game 3 for the Pacers Knicks so fascinating to me. Is like you've had two very close games, but we're really changing how we're going to talk about this series on the other side because of one game away from home, right? That could happen right here. And the Knicks have the talent to do it. They have to close. They have to close against a team that, like I said before we started the series, offensively is such a pain to guard because they don't really run a crazy amount of sets. They're not doing things that are very predictable, but that unpredictability works for them. Their core works really well together. Their pieces work really well together, but go down with me to Game 1 during that comeback. The way Neesmith gets the ball, they hit all these threes, is different every single time. And it isn't like some choreographed 5 different plays. Some is just, he caught the ball, screen and roll, deep three. That drives a guy like Tom Thibodeau, Mr. Defensive. We're going to play hard defense. If they do this, we do that. Well, what if we don't know what they're going to do? That is what that whole series has come down to. And they still almost have pulled these together. It is not like the Knicks have played so poorly. They are right there. They are right in it. And it's very rare that you have a moment that feels like a series defining moment in Game 1. Usually those happen like here, Game 3, Game 4, where it's like, the Pacers make the comeback in Game 3. Now the series turns. To have a 20-point comeback, to have all these wild celebrations, decades of lore come in with the Reggie Miller choke celebration that almost doesn't pan out. It usually doesn't happen to top your series, right? So it's been so wild, but you can still see the switch if the Knicks walk into Indiana, a team that's been desperate, a city that loves the Pacers, right? That is going to sell out Cambridge, that will have a very similar playoff experience to probably Oklahoma City, where you have this great one home crowd. Not to say Madison Square Garden isn't, right? But you know how fervorish Pacers fans are. And if they go in there and steal a game, we're gonna have a different conversation, because it feels like everything is Pacers, 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 and then boom, the Knicks could just win one right here. And who knows? Game 1, game 2, I don't say get thrown out the window, but it's like, okay. But if they steal one more, it's 2-2. That might seem simple, but with the way the series feels right now in this moment, one game here, a lot of things shift real quickly. And that's been the fun of these playoffs, because it feels like that has happened in so many different rounds, from the first round to now the conference finals.
Yeah, I mean, so did Halliburton choke too early in the series? Like, did he use it too early? Like,
because they won, no. If they would have lost that game, and this is, again, you don't get these moments in a game 1, like, ever.
No, you don't usually.
But like them winning that game in OT, it saves him. Now he can't do it again.
I bet he does. I bet he does. I bet he tries to do it again.
Unless he hits a spectacular winner in game 7 in a very similar fashion. The thing is, you don't really run into a big comeback in the same place that the other guy did it while he's broadcasting the game, sitting there, right in the crowd, in the stands, and then you pull off this crazy shot. Again, that shot was also nuts. He goes and drives in.
And then he just jumps out like 12
runs
times.
Out, fadeaway 3, right? And of course, you get the storybook. Adam Silver's probably writing it as we speak. Storybook bounce off the back rim that goes up. Whoop, everyone's got to wait. Silent crowd right through the net. Like, I feel like I'm watching High School Musical, and this is Troy Bolton winning the state championship. Like, you don't get that type of like perfect bounce. And then just because they're such good scriptwriters, that's the tie of the game. So he pulls out the iconic celebration that feels like it's this. Again, you've already written the Emmy Award winning film just to write the twist of the century, which is now they got to go back in front of a pissed New York crowd and a pissed New York team that responds to adversity pretty well and win in OT, and they do. And they got down in OT early and came back by hitting more threes. And that was game 1. You don't get that often to start your series. It's been a banger for that reason. And it makes this game 3 so intriguing, because if New York can just turn around and win one, you pop a little bit of the bubble. It may not completely go away. It's not going to fly around the room and absolutely deflate, but you can hear the air coming out if they drop a game here, because it feels so, these teams are so evenly matched that you can have that moment just like that.
No, like I said, I agree. I mean, I would choke after every win if I was Halliburton at this point. As well. Just choke. Just do it. Just like do different chokes, like one hand, 2 hand.
Maybe next time have one of your teammates choke you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, change it up. Like, people do some crazy stuff sometimes when it comes to choking. I don't, but some do.
You're worried about this being a family show, and you're the one walking in here. Come on, man.
I don't know what you're talking about. The fact that your brain went to something different is people do choking stuff all the time. It's just what they do. But no, I would do it all the time. It's a great celebration. I would do it. I did help having Reggie Miller there. But yeah, I mean, if they would have lost in overtime after him doing that, first of all, that play is ridiculous. Him just, okay, I'm gonna drive, and then it's like jumping out 50 times and then hitting it, and it's like, okay, now your foot's on the line. Now you got to go to overtime. Like, for him to stand in there and still play hard, them to come out and win the game. Yeah, I mean, but I would choke all the time. I would do it. I would just gesture it up. You have to play it up at this point.
No, they have to lose one at home here so they can do it like a game 5 if you really want that to work. Because I feel like you can't, if you do it in front of the home crowd, it doesn't really work. Like, oh yeah, we lost. Like,
well, you can't,
because they choked away a lead in Madison Square Garden, not anywhere else in one of the most historic basketball venues of all time, right? Like, shout out and kudos to Tyrese Halliburton having the wherewithal in that moment to even think of doing that. And also when he's doing it, right, he pulls out the choke, he's yelling and points right at Reggie Miller. Like, to have the wherewithal in the middle of this intense basketball game where you're trying to make this fervorish comeback, you hit one of the most insane shots we've had in recent memory. It reminded me of the Kawhi Game 7, like doink, that kept bouncing out of the rim. Maybe not, obviously not the exact same, not even the same stakes, but that same like cartoonish bouncing around the rim to add suspense. To have the wherewithal in the middle of all your teammates running at you to not only pull the celebration, then point to the guy who did it first. Like, you see me, is in its own level insane. And for it to almost be blown by, if you guys don't win that overtime, you will be clowned. You know how bad that would have been if they lose this game. But again, that's a series defining moment to top the series. Not even in the middle, not a swinging. That felt like and especially with how the series is going right now, that feels like the moment that defined this series already. And if we go back on it in a week, if we have those results, we might go, yeah, that game one, it sunk New York. Yep. Or it might be, yeah, it gave the Pacers some hope, but then we have another defining moment in game 3, 4, or 5 if we get to a 5, right? So it's like we don't have that happen often where you start the series with this insane game that feels like it switches momentum so heavily against two teams that even in game 2, very evenly matched, a close game. It wasn't a blowout in any way, shape, or form. It went down to the wire again. But all those little things matter. Confidence and also having a game in hand. You can get the Pacers could still lose one here, be up in the series. That's an insane thing to say when you've played 2 games away from home. You have not stepped on your home floor yet. How much fun? Too much fun, I would say.
Yeah, no. I mean, the Pacers-Knicks series almost feels like it's over, but it's far from over. We saw that with the Thunder Timberwolves game, with them getting a game. We thought that series was kind of over with them 2 up. But now Pacers are up 2-0, game 3 tonight. Thunder have a lead on the Timberwolves 2-1, game 4 tomorrow. So it'll be very interesting. Now we segue into a sport that continues to change and will forever change because there are no rules, it feels like, at this point. Like, honestly, I don't know why any of these teams listen to any of these structures anymore, these schools. College football continues to change things. I think this change is much for the better of the world of college sports and college football and how it is done and how it's played. There's a new seeding format going into this year's playoff for the 2025 season. It is now a straight seeding instead of the top 4 conference champs getting the byes. We saw that last year. I will pull up. I want to say this was, yep. So this is what last year's playoff looks like after the byes. So you had Oregon as the top overall seed, winning the Big Ten. Georgia, number 2, winning the SEC. Boise State, number 3, winning their conference in the Mountain West. And Arizona State, 4, after winning the Big 12. So that's kind of how it broke down, and then it broke down to these other teams hosting the first playoff sites. We talk about expansion. You go from 2 teams, BCS, 4 teams, now to 12. No one's ever going to be happy. It's definitely going to go to 16 probably next year or whatever. It's always going to continue to expand. It'll probably be 64 like today's NCAA tournament is probably by the time of it. Who knows anymore? But I do think this change is much for the better, like I said. So if you look at last year's, now I will compare what the playoff would have looked like with this year's seeding, much different. Oregon still would have been 1. I want to say Georgia's there at 2. Texas would be 3. Penn State would be 4. And then it much different. Notre Dame would have played Clemson. Boise State would have had to play Indiana. Arizona State would have played Ohio State. SMU and Tennessee would have played. So it is much different. And like I said, I think it's for the good. But I think what's interesting about this is now teams that not affiliated with the conference, meaning Notre Dame, can now get a bye. But I will say after the first year with all 4 teams losing who had a bye, I may not want to bye. Because not only do you get a bye, but you don't get the home playoff game. I think that's very big in this whole thing. If you can get a home playoff game, that is awesome. Just have that atmosphere. Those games were great on the campuses. But when you have the playoff game, you go then into the bowl games. It's a little different, 50-50 crowd. So you kind of lose an advantage there. And you don't have to play a week, which people always have the argument of, I want to buy to rest. And some people are like, no, I don't want to buy because I want to keep playing. So you have that. But I think out of all the changes that have happened in college sports over the last 3 years, this is a good one.
I think the only issue I have, so Caleb, I thought you'd be in favor of this because of the Notre Dame thing. The
I do.
only issue I kind of have with this is that I don't want it to be like SEC Big Ten dominant. If you know what I mean, like the
I
top
get
four
it.
always being from those two conferences, and they always get the buys. Um, and it might not be like that, but I think that's. I mean, even if we kind of look at it, was kind of panning out that way. So I don't know. I would like to see. I think if the playoffs keeps getting expanded, it won't be as big of an issue. But yeah, I don't know. I don't want the bias to always just fall to Big Ten and SEC schools.
I think that's what surprised me the most about this change is that really with this you have an obvious couple winners and losers. The losers being any group of 5 team because you have to be damn near perfect. Like Boise State was a prime example of this. Their only loss is to Oregon, who's the number 1 seed. They won their conference title. They had no blemishes, right? But had to have a good schedule non-conference wise, had to dominate within their conference. And they were guaranteed that seed because of how high they were, but also had to win their conference to be a guaranteed shot in, right? Like even under this new seeding, as we're looking at right now, Boise State's still in, right? But their path to get there was basically perfection. And remember, they only lost to Oregon by 1 score, too. If that's a blowout game, we may be talking about them different. Their rank might be different. They might not be here under the new seeding format. This is also a loss, in my mind, to the Big 12 and the ACC because after these tell teams in here, right? Arizona State, I think, even with them winning their conference title, was not in the top 14 or right top 12. My apologies, if just straight seedings. Clemson, I think, was in there, but barely, right? Like you barely have you have a lot of these fringe teams that took advantage of the fact that if you had a conference title, right? Arizona State, who gave us one of the best first round games, almost took down Texas. Clemson, not so much, right? But winning their title and giving that was the big thing about getting the automatic rounds in was we don't want to lose the sanctity of the conference championship. So we need the automatic bid so it doesn't mean it means something. At least 2 conferences have lost with that in mind. Because if you have a weak year like you did in the ACC last year where everything kind of felt chalky and not that deep, and in the playoffs it panned out that way, the ACC was not that good. What's stopping you from having a conference championship like Clemson who doesn't make the playoff because of a hot South Carolina team? So that's a loss for them. Loss for the G5. Win for Notre Dame. And Notre Dame did nothing outside of just win last year. They didn't really lobby. It's not like Bavacqua was out there, the athletic director, really trying to make this major change. But this obviously helps him because when Swarbrick he's on these committees that makes these playoff changes for those who do not know. He made the concession of we'll have more at-larges, even if it means we don't get that bye when the last year's playoff was made. But now Notre Dame can win out, do what they want to do. That is a huge win for them, and it structurally does not change much for them. They did not have to concede anything. They can keep scheduling how they want. So there's a couple winners in this G5, ACC, Big 12, big losers, couple winners like Notre Dame, and again, the Big 10 SEC. But it's hard for me to really worry too much about this because I feel like 12 is that number where if you're the 13th best team, there's something you could have done to improve your circumstances. I understood the qualms about 4. I think the Florida State-Alabama argument, no matter how you fell on it, felt weird, right? And you had 2 valid cases for a team that was perfect or damn near perfect in Florida State versus a more talented and probably more able team at that moment in Alabama 2 years ago for the 4 seed. I understood why that didn't make sense. When you're arguing me 12 and 13, that usually means you're arguing a 2 or 3 loss team. Win one of those games, now you're having a different talk. Now we're having a different conversation. So guarantee the buys, guarantee a certain amount in. I don't care. We have 12. You have an opportunity to make your case. It's not so fringe like the 14 was.
Yeah, I mean, I think now it's kind of different because I think now with the transfer portal and NIL is now you can kind of even some of these teams out. And historically it was like, okay, you might have 4 teams that can actually win it or 2 teams or whatever. Last year kind of proved you had a little bit more, and I think that could be changing. So actually the expanded playoffs coming at a great time, I would say. Because now you have more teams that have a chance. Like I saw, when you looked at these playoff teams from last year, you had, I would say, like 6 teams that realistically could have won the championship, right? Like that's just who they were and how they were based. So now it is a little different. I think eventually, to Trevor's point with the Big Ten and SEC, I think eventually, the Big Ten will be able to that's what they want because they view their conferences as the best. So eventually we're going to get to a 14-team playoff, I think, 14 or 16. If we go to 14, 2 teams will get the buys, and that will be the Big Ten and SEC only. And they also want more automatic bids, basically where they're like, hey, we're going to get 4 teams in, you get 4 teams in, and everybody else is at larges. So to Trevor's point, sadly, I think it's only going to get worse with them controlling college football because they have now created super conferences and they've kind of made themselves the premier programs because, Jerry, what does it do in the SEC?
Just means more.
Just means more because that's what you guys down there in the South are doing. So that's just how they view it, and that's how they view themselves. And the Big Ten is right there behind them of like, this is how we view ourselves. We have the back-to-back national champs and everything. So sadly, that's only going to get worse because there are going to be some years where those 2 conferences are not going to have the best football teams. It's just going to happen. But we view them in that way, just like us last year arguing a 3-loss Alabama team, a 3-loss South Carolina team, a 3-loss Ole Miss team. Like we're arguing because they're in the SEC. Well, it doesn't really matter because if you kind of look how those teams played in their bowl games, some of them didn't fare too well. So, like at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. But they're in the SEC, so you have that conception of them. But I think it's much different now with the landscape that we have college football. Do straight seeding, I think, makes sense. I still think the ACC and Big 12 will get automatic bids for a conference champ. But to Jerry's point, you could be sitting there now at the 12th and 11th seed. And what did winning your conference championship do other than get you in the playoffs? Not much, right? Like if you're Arizona State, you'd had to play Ohio State, who went on a rampage because they were pissed off. And look at what they, you know what I mean? So you don't have these type of games, these moments. You don't have a Boise State, getting to play in the Fiesta Bowl and get the money that happens from playing in that game and the exposure from playing in that game. So it's much different. I think they're trying to do the right things moving forward. I just want them to change it all at once and give us our last and final, other than we're going to do this. And now this offseason, we're going to do this. And then next offseason, we're going to change it to 14 teams. It's just give us something definitive. If you want to make the changes, make those changes. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. But to Trevor's point, the Big Ten and SEC are only going to continue to control this even more because they're at the head of the table. Everybody looks at Greg Sankey as the de facto commissioner of college football, basically. He is the commissioner of the SEC. To Jerry's point with Jack Swarbrick, so kind of a cool thing. I got to talk to Jack Swarbrick before Notre Dame's home playoff game. I got to talk to him for like 5 minutes, Jerry, and I got to ask him like 4 or 5 questions. He was very nice to me, great man. First thing I said, how did it feel being the most powerful athletic director in the world? Because you got to kind of control these things, not from a commissioner side and more of one school and just view that from a power. And he kind of humbly was like, I didn't view myself that way. I said, but you did because of how you kind of controlled everything and you were involved and you kind of helped create these things. And then the second thing I asked him was about Greg Sankey being the commissioner of college football. And he said, if Greg wants that job, I think he should have it. So that would be very interesting. I think that's where we're moving forward. I think is they're kind of going to have these overlords. And until then, kind of moving around in the stubborn circles of what the hell is going to happen. These rules continue to change. But yeah, I mean, as a Notre Dame fan, like for us to get a bye, great. Because everybody talked about, you need to be in a conference. It doesn't change anything. Who cares about the conference thing? It just proves that at the end of the day, the schools that are only trying to prioritize the conference championships are these schools, the smaller conferences, I would say. I wouldn't be shocked in a couple of years if there is no conference championship game for the SEC and the Big Ten, and it's just straight outright winner. So you play one less game.
That's not going to happen.
It could, though.
I mean, I'll explain why. And it's because your logic is there, but you're forgetting the most important part. The conference championships make so much money for the big conferences. Those will not go away, but that's what makes this seeding to me so fascinating in terms of we're basically removing the automatic buys or the automatic ins for conference champions.
Yeah.
At least putting it on paper that way, because that to me signals long-term scarier like more scarier, however you say it, issues. Because if the ACC and Big 12 are like, all right, whatever, like, and kind of are, I would say putting the gloves down. That was the big fight, was making these conference championships matter, especially for the Big 12 and the ACC, which still right now in this moment are power conferences.
Yeah.
I get it. The SEC and Big 10, they are the Big 2. As much as you want to say there's Big 4, there's levels here. But they're still trying to, or these commissioners were trying to at least level the playing field as much as they could, knowing that their hands are tied. This feels like a concession that screams to me more problems in the future, because the college football playoff and all these things are going to change and continue to change. And a lot of these things are happening under the guise of bigger college athletic things that are going on, like the House settlement, which could give millions of dollars in back pay to former athletes that these schools are all bracing for, which may or may not go through. This is really where this stuff gets political, not to over politicize it, but this is where changing administrations and all this could change how this looks for these schools, and they're trying to guide this, right? That does matter to college football, because if you have to pay $20 million for former athletes because of all the money they lost, that's a hard thing to budget for just like that. At the same time, NIL legislation probably won't go anywhere, but there's always that talk about it. What will NIL look like? Well, will players become athletes? These things may seem like bigger tier stuff, but directly impact how this looks. Because if these schools have to start paying money for kids to be considered employees, well, they're going to go with the bigger TV deals. And keep in mind, really, by 2030, we're going to be having the same conversation we had years ago with realignment, because the ACC is specifically, their media deal comes to a point where a team like Clemson, Florida State, those schools can go, it's worth us buying out the 3 years to be in the SEC, or a Big 12 team guaranteeing themselves in the Big 10. I'm not thinking that deep off my dome, but like, if Arizona State wants to pony it up, so they continue their success, what's stopping them from being the Big 10, right?
Yeah.
So this feels like one small domino in the midst of so many things that are way higher. But it is a disturbing domino, because as much as there's always this kind of back and forth with the playoff, and I sit on the side of, I want teams to be rewarded for the regular season, not for their 24/7 composites, because that's kind of what the argument always comes down to with the last seed, which is, oh, Clemson had a better record, but they played in a weaker ACC. Those South Carolina Gamecocks, those Alabama Crimson Tide, the Ole Miss Rebels, look at their transfer portal class and 24/7. Jackson Dart's a better quarterback than Kate Klubnik. Pick your argument, right? But that's what these last seeds always come down to. And I've always fell on the side of, you need to make the regular season matter for all the schools involved here, because that's what keeps the sport wildly interesting. It is having these matchups where you have cross-country games that have real meaningful stakes, like an Arizona State, Ohio State game. I know it's under the new seeding, but like, those games are more fun and keep more of the country into it, which in the long term makes you the money, right? But if the West Coast right now, which has lost a major conference and has half their teams playing in the Midwestern Conference, it's hard for me to go, oh, this is a good thing, when USC plays Wisconsin on a regular basis. That makes no sense. And if you're a USC fan, why would you care if they go up to Minnesota? What tie do you have to Minnesota?
Yeah.
Instead of playing Oregon State or Washington State, a closer drive for the football games, but also for the volleyball game, for the softball game, for the golf tournaments, right? Like, the fact there's probably a USC team this year, or UCLA or Oregon team that played a golf tournament in New Jersey because they're in the same conference, that trickles down to football. Because if you don't get them to care about these other things, yeah, the big sports might be nice, but if you have these super mega conferences, it's just going to be, oh, Michigan plays USC because they're a conference game. That guarantees you the ratings because they have the nice helmets, but you're isolating more people in the long term. And that's the thing I worry about with a concession like this in the playoff, where two conferences that are supposed to be equal are saying, now the other two conferences, they want more spots. They don't want automatic bids, because they know a fringe case Michigan team can beat out Colorado, right? Or pick a Big 12 school. That's worrisome. And that's going to be one of those small pieces here that we'll look back to in 3 or 4 years when some big decision about the sport comes down. They made a concession here. Well, the 16-team playoff means this happened. Or the realignment chatter means Clemson left and now the ACC's in turmoil. It starts with these kind of calls here. Really grim, I know.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's one of those things where it does suck because you lose so much history and prestige and just what we have when we have changed to some of these super conferences. With the West Coast schools now in the Midwest and just all over the place and how it's shaped out, and it's only going to get worse. What would you? I mean, this will never happen because some of these schools have too much pride and too much money around. But what about like a regulation system, kind of like how we have in European soccer, where you could get relegated? You put in a pool of top 50 teams based off of different criterias, records,
Mhm.
history, whatever you want to do. Top 50 teams. You have like your top tier, your second tier, or whatever. Kind of keep it fair. And if you are, one of the 5 bottom teams, you move down after 2 or 3 years. And if you're one of the top 5 teams in the other one, you move up. I think that would be a fun way to view it. It will never happen because these schools just will refuse to do that because you'll have some schools on the fringe, say like a Boise State, who would argue, no, we need to be there. But I think ultimately that's probably the best way to do it. And it may come to that eventually because you're going to have so many schools that are so powerful at the top, just kind of control everything where you have like, hey, we're going to have our top 40 teams and they're going to fight for the college playoff.
I go back and forth on relegation because it would be fun because relegation battles as someone who's like keeps up with the Premier League can't have a lot of meaning. The thing I worry about is the Premier League actually kind of gives us a good glimpse into why this could be a problem. Obviously, like you said, Caleb, this wouldn't happen because the schools would not allow this. There's too much money at play for them to lose, right? And in the Premier League, that is wildly the case. These teams, it is a fun thing to keep an eye on. And if you're a team that's near the relegation zone, it's nervy. You keep an eye on your games. You are very conscious of what other teams are doing. It keeps you involved the whole season. But these teams that go from the championship, which is that second tier in English football, to the Premier League, it's usually just a revolving door because the money at the top is so much bigger that even if you have made this Cinderella run from these lower leagues, you make the championship, you are the last team in because of this final game. Oh, the drama. Oh, great, this and that. You walk into the Premier League playing guys who their front three costs more than your whole lineup. And that's probably what would turn into college football. And I would argue they're going to make a de facto relegation league with no up or down with the SEC and Big Ten if they continue to grow. Right? If the SEC adds a Clemson, a Florida State, takes any other body part they want from the ACC, that's kind of where we get to this point already. But instead of there being that fun at the bottom, they're not going to have that. The thing I've always wished for, and I almost hope and have a backwards hope will happen, is that at a certain point, these schools are going to get fed up with being so far away and playing teams they don't care about, that they have no connection to, right? Like I was picking on the USC, UCLA games. It's like, do you think Rutgers is going to want to play Oregon? At a certain point, they're not going to care. And I'm hoping that at a certain point that these fans will appreciate, and these schools will realize that their fans will appreciate those more regional games because those are the things people care about. As a Missouri fan, I want to play Kansas. I like Oklahoma as a team. I'm glad they're in the SEC now. That's a historic rival. Same with Texas. Not as much with Florida, right? And I know there's plenty of SEC Missouri jokes you can make, but that's the case across the league. The Big Ten's a little bit more wild. I think it's the easier one to pick on, but there are plenty of games that SEC folk are like, yeah, it's the SEC, but I don't care about them that much, right? You have the old Southwest Conference in there. They care. The Arkansas-Texas game means more to Arkansas-Texas fans than the Texas-Florida game, than even the Texas-Tennessee game, right? But it's Texas-Tennessee. When you put that on the 3 p.m. ESPN broadcast for your week game, you'll get viewers because those are two schools people know. But my hope is deep down, and we see it ways like in the Sun Belt, where the Sun Belt was once obviously almost the joke of college football, but it's turned into, I'd argue, probably the best, second best G5, if not the best, competing with the Mountain West in terms of football talent. And all the rivalries and games in there are very local. And it is in a way carved itself a niche to be a very fun and good G5 league. Now, obviously, they've turned into a little bit of like a transfer portal up, right? Oh, you go to App State, you're real good there. Then you end up at pick P5 or P4 school. But my hope is that with the lower leagues, in a way, trying to become more regional, knowing that that makes the fan experience better, and in turn makes them more money because you have better overall attendance, better overall ratings, that you can almost, not say reverse course, but have that logic come down because so many games will not matter to fan bases, which will level out the ratings, even if they have the cool names. Because again, at a certain point, you pick these big conferences, it's like, this is a great game right now, but there is no history here. There is no real connection. It feels very corporate, which is what this is turning into. My hope is with the game and the sport specifically in college football that is so regional, that it relies on regionality, those rivalries that are rooted in both these games, but also like sportsmanship. Like, Caleb, you guys hate Michigan.
Yeah,
That's an in-state rival. You would do anything to beat them, right? But would you rather, like, at a certain point, you're going to get tired of playing other teams that are way far away. Do you really care about playing Nebraska?
No, I mean, they've been in the Big Ten long enough. It's
But,
fine.
like, do you really care?
No, I
When
could care
you
less.
can argue a state closer to you, Wisconsin, right across the lake, you care 10 times more about that game.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest problem is when they did this whole thing is they should have did like football conferences and then like left all the other conferences. Just because you have the non-revenue sports where you brought up golf, you have softball, baseball, just gymnastics towards, they should have did just football conferences. Hey, for football, you're going to be in the Big Ten, we're going to do it that way. And then every other sport, we're going to keep the Pac-12 alive. They should have done it that way. They refused to do it that way. I don't think that they could get everybody to agree to it on those ends. But yeah, eventually that's what it needs to go to, where you have these football leagues and then you have everybody else to get back to those regional matchups and that type of thing. It's a slippery slope because you don't really have anybody overseeing it or going on. Like, I couldn't tell you, like, who was the person that came up with the idea to do the straight seating. Like, I don't know the answer to that. Like, who is the people that sat down and made that choice? Like, was that like some
Sankey,
people?
Edwards? Because
Yeah,
we talked about commissioners. Yes, Greg Sankey does a lot of the media. The Big Ten is not also in this together. This is,
oh yeah,
I think of this a lot like the Texas Oklahoma going to the SEC, where everyone's like, "Oh my God, Texas is trying to buck up. Oh my God, Texas is acting tough," and Oklahoma is sitting right there like, "We're also doing this too, but just make fun of Texas, right? Just don't talk about us. We know we're breaking up the Big 12. Shh, we want the money too, right?" The Big Ten's kind of the same way, like where it's like, "Yeah, we want the straight seating, but talk to Sankey. Don't talk to Jim Edwards. Don't ask him anything. We don't want to hear from him. No, Sankey's got it. Yeah, he's got it. Cool. Yeah, they're just like going for the ride. And I don't blame them. Like right now, the Big Ten TV deal is actually costs more and makes more money for the schools than the SEC. That'll probably change. They'll go back and forth when the SEC renegotiates. That's kind of just pick your year, right? But it's like those two are both culprits in this. But again, it's because of the money. Money talks. Money's the reason the Pac-12 doesn't exist, right? But it's these rivalries here as Caleb just starts to stew over the comment that's in front of us.
I'm not stewing.
He's not stewing, but he ain't happy.
I don't worry about cheaters.
Oh, see, this is the type of stuff that makes college athletics itself more fun. But when you have to throw in all these weird games, especially in the football season where there's tons of pride, right? You're throwing in these weird matchups in these bigger conferences that are just there to have a guaranteed TV slot. Like Mizzou played Mississippi State last year. I couldn't have cared less. I'm glad we beat them. Mississippi State was bad. If they were good, I cared a little bit more. But it's like I don't have any ties to Mississippi State. There is no rivalry there. It's great to have cowbells. But it's not like I'd be like, you know what? I'd care more if we play Kansas State, a team we played in our history, or go play Iowa State. Obviously, Kansas is the easy one. But like that's the type of mid-season October game that kind of gets lost in the shuffle because Mizzou played Mississippi State, we now have Texas A&M Texas back, right? Like that's how this kind of all shaped out is like, yeah, you have all these mid-tier matchups, which then I keep arguing, I keep worried about alienates people in the long run because if you're not a Texas fan, right, or you're not an A&M fan, or you're not one of the top 15 programs in terms of like eyeball fans, you're going to slowly get tuned out. You better hope to stay relevant. You have a couple good years because if you slide to 6-6 for 2 or 3 years, Who cares? You're one of the middle tier Big Ten or SEC teams that no one talks about. You have no future. Maybe your team gets plucked up in the portal. Like it's such a house of cards that to get these great matchups every weekend, you are sacrificing so many fan bases and hoping that the teams that have good years will continue to support. But it's like, if Michigan State has 2 or 3 more bad years in this situation, right, with all the stuff that's going on, at a certain point, you're like, I just wait for basketball season. I don't care that we're playing.
I think that way anyways, Jared.
Yeah, but that's because you guys have been mid, but you're also in a conference where it's like, I don't play teams you care about half the time or don't have a great rivalry with. You're going out to New Jersey. You don't really care you're playing Rutgers.
Yeah.
You're going to play Illinois, the team that you've played a ton more, or Indiana or something like that, where it's that close proximity-wise, where it's like, oh, maybe I'll go drive down there or vice versa. That can create that intrigue for more teams and keep the sport, I don't say more fun, but I think alive in the spirit of it, which has been these great rivalries, these traditions, which the sport does not want to kill, but kills everything around it to make it happen. We kill off rivalries, we kill off conferences, and wonder why the traditions of like great tailgates or they do this before are dying. It's like, yeah, because why would you care at a certain point? You're not in the playoff. You don't play teams you care about, but your school made $10 million more because they played on ESPN. That's the world we're living in, because that $10 million talks more than the X amount of fans your school brings to whatever Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the last thing I'll end with here is at the end of the day, it's all a TV show, right? Like ESPN really cares about this. The major networks to hold these games really care about this. That's why it's such a debate. When you get to the selection show of like, oh, Alabama, South Carolina, Ole Miss or whatever, because ESPN benefits the most from that, right? Because they are the ones that only can broadcast the playoff games. And, you know, they did the deal with TNT or whatever, just flip-flop trade or whatever, but that's not going to happen every year. So I think that's the other problem, and I love how ESPN kind of like they do like what Jerry was doing with the whispering of like they're ruining the sport, but actually they're also ruining, like they're trying to blame everybody else, but they're also heavily involved. Like their hands and fingerprints are on the gun, and you know it's just as much as everybody else because it is a TV show. They're the ones that benefit from these big matchups in the playoff because there are certain teams that draw better than others. And sadly, it's hard to say that or, you know, to be around that when you think about this kind of stuff, but it is a TV show. All for entertainment purposes. That's what anybody ever really cares about. Trevor like keeps disappearing and walking away. I don't know what's
sorry.
going
I think
on.
John Foster is outside of my house and he just blared his siren.
This guy's now harassing other people. This guy's a psychopath.
He scared me, dude. It was like right outside of my window. I don't know if it's psycho, but he is working today, so I'm assuming it is him.
He's a psychopath. This guy was banned from the show. Earlier, he's trying to make his way on.
Earlier, I had to disappear because I was nanoseconds away from pooping my pants.
Okay, Shaq.
Today, and like I couldn't even talk, dude.
First of all, what up, Dylan? Back to you. There with the what's up, boys. Trevor, you've been on the toilet during this show before, so what stopped you from this time? There's a mute button.
I'm you dude. There was stuff flying. There was
stuff flying.
It was bad. It was bad. It was.
This is bad. This is very, very bad.
And I'm sorry. That's just kind of the stuff I do for the show. You know, I sat here for 30 minutes fighting for my life. I almost had a Nolan Nugget situation.
Yeah, that would have been good. It would not have been good.
About 30 minutes, I was like, dude, we're gonna be on here for another 30. I can't keep doing it. So Jerry was talking, and I was like, this is my time to go take the quick move of my life and get back to the
Oh man, good thing I know how to gab. I literally gabs this man go to the bathroom.
Perfect.
That's insane.
That's perfect, because I literally I couldn't. If I would have talked a lot this episode, I would have pooped my pants. I couldn't think of anything else besides I am about to poop my pants.
This is what the college football realignment does to people. It makes their stomachs twist and turn.
Also, me realize that I shouldn't eat the hot wing hours before this podcast starts.
Dude did hot ones before this is trying to do the podcast.
Dude, well, have you ever had wings, etc., Jerry?
Yes, I remember my time in South Bend. Oh man,
I tried a wall wing.
Oh my god.
Then I got the Wango wings, which are the second hottest wings. So I was suffering, dude. My stomach was hot. Dude. Like there was a palpable heat coming from my stomach.
My god.
I mean, I think we do that for one of the videos. Is we all go and get the hottest wings ever and see how long we last, and whoever lasts the longest without having to leave is the winner.
I had some good practice today.
Yeah, you had a nice little trial run.
He's just ripping up his stomach lining to to take a break during the podcast.
So the things that we learned today are Jerry compared Troy Bolton to Tyrese Halliburton, or vice versa. He brought that one in there. That was a great one that he brought in. Don't know where it came from, but it was amazing. He dripped it in. The other thing we almost learned is Trevor almost had a nugget situation. But he quickly evaded the situation, and we will move to Nuggets picture here. So this is the other thing we learned on today's program as we wrap this show up, because now we have to at this point, because Trevor may have to go again, and we can't be another man down. I would like his shorts to stay clean.
Oh, dude. I think I would have burned a hole through them. It was hot, dude. It was hot.
Fire-breathing dragon over there. So what we learned is this is Nolan before he creepily gets people into his lair or wherever he's at, and this is him after. Very excited. Still don't know what this comment is, but we'll take it. Before a kidnapping and after a successful one. Those are the things that we learned today. If you learned anything else, you can let us know. Email, call, text, hit the hotline. Don't know what the number is. Probably 1-800 V.O.C. Figure that out if that even works, because it probably doesn't. Another thing that we learned today is Trevor needs a sponsorship from an underwear company, a toilet supply,
or toilet paper company.
Or toilet paper company. Yes, that'd be very nice. Because these intensive debates that we have on this show sometimes get to you, and they hurt your insides.
Oh, dude, the amount of relief. And then it was nice because I could hear you guys talking because my just on the other side of this wall. And I was like, I'm so glad they haven't brought up the fact that I'm gone yet.
I knew you were gone, but I didn't. I was just like, whatever.
As soon as Jerry started talking, I'm like, this is my one and only opportunity.
That's what I do.
Well, I thought about, honestly, when you were gone, I didn't know what you were doing. But I honestly thought about changing to the 3 big camera views here, and I was like, no, I don't know where he is right now, so I'll keep it small because it's fine now the way that is. But now that you're back, I can go to the 3 and figure out why you were gone. Is amazing because you just kind of were gone for a little bit. That was very quick that you were gone, I will say.
Dude, no, it did not take a whole lot of effort. Right.
It was quick and easy, and I'm glad that it was for you.
Yeah, the amount of relief I had afterwards was euphoric.
Did you have more pain in your stomach before or during?
The dirt, dude. I literally that might have been the quickest poo I've ever had in my life. I'm more of like a scroll on TikTok for 20 minutes and then come out when my legs are numb. But that one, I was like, I got to get it out for the boys on the V.O.C., dude. So I went, I handled business, and I came back and I tried to seamlessly just sit back down. But dude, yeah, I feel much better.
Yeah, I bet you do. I'm glad that everything worked out for you and that you still have a nice clean pair of shorts.
Yeah. I just got these shorts from Hollister, I think.
Okay.
And that would have kind of sucked if I would have pooed in them.
Brand new shorts. Gone forever. Brown stains and everything.
Yeah.
Oh, we got somebody asking a question here. Do I need to get a medic over to Trev Talk? I think
The
we're
police
fine.
were already out there.
Yeah,
Dude,
he
yeah.
was already out there. Clearly, this guy he's circling neighborhoods. He was broke into my house, trying to break into Trevor's house. Jerry, watch out. St.
Jerry,
Louis.
yeah, he might be on the
Hey,
plane.
the police are understaffed here, so they'll actually use the help.
Well, who knows? You never know with that guy, but he's in the penalty box for a couple weeks. He's not allowed back. He can comment, but he's not allowed back on the show. His face will not be seen for a while. If everybody made it through us with us, that was great. Trevor did not make it through us the entire time, but he still showed up.
I did. And that's what I do for you guys, man.
I appreciate you. You bring
Be around-
content. I just want content. That's all I'm about. I'm one of those people that anything.
I should have brought it with me.
I don't know if we wanted to hear what the sounds were made. I could only have imagined.
The sounds are so loud. That's actually why the police showed up.
Yeah.
Like I think someone just exploded a bomb in your house. Felt like it, dude. Felt like the stuff that hit Hiroshima.
Oh my gosh. It was probably that big of a balloon too. A gas balloon like that probably was over top of it as well. Because I could only imagine the smells in that place.
Oh God, I don't even want to think about that, dude.
Yeah, that would have been bad. I'm glad we could not smell that through the screen.
Does Wings Etc. still have like the 50-cent wing day or whatever they used to do, like on like a Wednesday?
I think so. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I spent like $20 today on 15 wings. So
one bathroom trip you'll never forget.
Yeah. No.
Discover ads like 20 wings, $15. Bathroom trip.
If you're clogged, go to Wings Etc.
Oh, dude, it'll clean you right up.
Yeah, Miralax,
really
Wings Etc. Yes.
It was funny because I was like eating the wall wing because my brother gave it to me, and the waitress like comes up and she's like, "Hey, you guys need anything?" I'm full on crying, like I have tears coming down my nose is running. I'm like, "No, I'm okay." Dude, I don't know how people do that wall challenge. That was the craziest, hottest thing I've ever eaten in my life.
That's right. They make you sign a waiver.
Yeah, dude, because I was like, I put myself in the mindset of like, oh, you have to eat 9 more of these after this. There's no way. It's impossible, dude. I was in such a pit of despair after eating one of those.
Pit of despair.
And who knew that just hours later I'd be in another pit of despair because of that one.
On a podcast.
On a podcast, I would argue that the second pit of despair was worse than the first pit of despair.
On a live podcast.
On a live podcast that like I have to somehow exit without arousing any suspicion and have to quickly dispose of the contents of my stomach.
You did a good job. I didn't know what happened.
I tried. But that's just what I do for you guys in this podcast. I hold in a heater for 35 minutes.
And it got released, and that's good. All within one podcast. Dude. That's what we do.
I need to go make sure that like my toilet isn't on fire.
the Trevor Hot Ones episode is going to feed families.
That's what we need.
Dude, you can get anything out of me if you start giving me hot wings, dude.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Cut it off. Cut it off. Cut it off. We're done.
Well, this has been a great show. We will be back next Sunday. Hopefully Trevor figures out his bowel movements.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with like a bananas and oatmeal or something next Sunday.
No, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. Maybe a light, just something light. Maybe like a salad next week.
Yeah, right, dude.
Just like a nice little salad. Just a nice little salad. Like, try to save yourself a nice little salad. But that will do it. We'll be back next Sunday at 7 p.m. again for another arousing show, as Trevor likes to use that word.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have most likely NHL Stanley Cup Final maybe set. NBA could still be going on. We'll talk. Something will probably change in college football by then. But we'll figure it out. Thanks for watching.
Peace.